In this recap episode of Jules FM, I'm reflecting on my conversation with Emma Murray, high-performance psychology expert and founder of high-performance mindfulness. Emma works with elite athletes and leaders to unlock focus, resilience and success, and her insights apply to all of us. Welcome to Jules FM, stories of courage, creativity and possibility. I'm Jules, and in each episode we dive into the real conversations behind extraordinary achievements, the mindset shifts, strategies, and what it takes to create your best life. Emma works in high-performance mindfulness with elite athletes, leaders, performers. But what resonated with me the most wasn't just what she teaches, but why it works. Emma's journey into this space didn't start with certainty. In fact, as a teenager, she played high-level netball and was introduced to sports psychology early, but like many young athletes, she didn't think she needed it. She was fit, driven, capable, and mindset felt secondary. Then came the injuries, repeated setbacks, time out, and that feeling of frustration and shame that can creep in when your body isn't doing exactly what you want it to do. And Emma spoke about this later as the injury shame cycle, and it really stayed with me because although she didn't end up at the very top level as an athlete, those experiences gave her something arguably more valuable, a deep understanding of what performers go through when things don't go to plan. And it reminded me of something I really believe in, that nothing we do is ever wasted. And Emma said the same. Everything we do can be leading somewhere that we just don't realize. Often things make sense retrospectively. Every experience becomes another piece of the puzzle. And often it's only in hindsight that things do start to make sense. One of the things I loved was how Emma talked about finding your passion. Not in some big dramatic way, but by paying attention. It was a little bit like what Vicky Betrader said. Look at the things that keep getting your attention. Emma suggested asking yourself 3 really simple questions. What do you spend money on? What do you read about? And what do you talk about constantly? And for Emma, even as a student, the signs were already there. She was watching Oprah when she was young, listening deeply and wanting to help people solve their problems. She just didn't know yet how it would all come together. And I feel mine was a bit the same. As a child, I loved to entertain, sing, dance, hold shows for everyone in the neighbourhood. I also liked to play schools where I was the teacher. I think I was a little bit bossy. Anywho, years later, here I find myself, all the parts coming together and forming a clearer picture of why I am here and how I can serve others. Emma's path into mindfulness wasn't linear either. It came through learning meditation with her mum and then stumbling across a book called Sacred Hoops by Phil Jackson while she was sitting in a psychologist's office. That book and Phil Jackson's philosophy introduced a powerful idea to Emma that helping athletes become still, present and trusting of their instincts could be more valuable than actually teaching them the skills of the game. In fact, Jackson ended up spending more time teaching presence than basketball. He recognized that Michael Jordan was an absolute expert in skills and athleticism when it came to basketball. So he knew that if he could get him into the right mindset, anything else he could teach him Michael Jordan would be able to work out, and it would come to him in that moment, which is so cool and so incredibly true for everything we do. I know that golf is a very infuriating game, and I know that the more you think about it and the more you analyze your strokes when you're playing it, the less effective you are, and the more you can actually not think about it, after, of course, you practice the skills, the better the result will be. And I think that applies to everything we do. If we're in our heads and we're wondering about how it's going to look or what people are thinking or whether we're doing this right or that right, we're actually not in flow. We're not allowing our bodies to do what we have trained them to do. And that idea runs through everything Emma teaches and everything we do in life. Because if you're not in the moment, What are you missing out on, and how much of yourself can you actually bring to that point? Emma explained mindfulness in a way that stripped back all of the mystique for me. It's not relaxation. It's not zoning out. It's being fully in this moment without attaching to the past or projecting into the future. And that's not an easy thing to do. It sounds so simple, but actually silencing the chatter in your mind, or one, recognize it, but then silencing that chatter takes a lot of work. Emma explained that stress doesn't actually live in the present moment. It lives in our thoughts about what's already happened or what might happen. And she said there are a number of common fears that we all carry and that tend to cause stress. And they are fear of failure, fear of what people think, and fear of not being good enough. And these three fears, with others of course, but these three trigger the same biological response that our ancestors had to real danger. They cause us to have a shallow breath, tight shoulders, racing heart, fight, flight, or freeze response, which back in the day, in the caveman days, a caveman would have in response to a saber-toothed tiger. And that was for survival. And it is inbuilt in us for that very reason. But when we perceive something as a stress, our lives actually usually aren't at risk. So that response is very dramatic and very significant in our bodies. But it impacts us in exactly the same way. And over time, if we live in that state long enough, it becomes our baseline. And then add one more stress and we start to feel worse, and keep adding stresses on, little stresses over time. Maybe you don't even notice them, but eventually we're feeling like we can't get up and do what we need to do or make decisions we need to make. And all of this started with our thoughts and our fears. And this is why Emma is so clear that mindfulness isn't passive. It takes work. You first of all have to notice your thoughts. Then you have to soften your breath, drop your shoulders, and redirect your attention. And practice every single day. One of the practical tools Emma shared was journaling, a way to slow the mind and take ruminating thoughts out of your head and onto the page. It creates space in your head to stop and look at things objectively without so much emotion. It can give you perspective and awareness. And although Emma doesn't journal herself, she said that a lot of the people she works with have really great results from actually doing this. And for me personally, I love to journal. I'm not as consistent with it as I should be. However, when I do, it makes a huge difference. And even at night, if I'm in bed and a thought comes into my head, I will get up and write it down so it's out of my head. So it's not going round and round and round and keeping me awake. And then in the morning, I try and, when I remember, try and do some journaling. And I also use journaling to write down goal setting and positive kind of manifestation statements and things like that. And I find it really, really effective. What really stood out was her emphasis on self-awareness, not labeling thoughts as good or bad, but asking, is this helpful or unhelpful? And this distinction alone felt really powerful. If we go to label things good and bad, sometimes that adds guilt. Like if I'm thinking thoughts that, that's not good, I shouldn't think that thought, then it makes me feel bad for thinking it. Whereas if I go, that's not helpful, I'm thinking about what is good for me or what is useful at that moment, not necessarily a bad thing. So I think that was a really important distinction. Emma also discussed visualization and mindset, and she was very clear on one thing. Mindset doesn't replace skill. A great mindset won't outplay skills that aren't developed, but the right mindset can help bridge the gap between talent levels. And I think this is also where Phil Jackson touched on Michael Jordan in terms of he had done the work and he had created the skills and he had gone through the reps every day to become such a great basketballer. But then to get him to that next level, it took shifting his mind. And this is what Emma referred to as a magician. She talked about the difference between a warrior and a magician, and warriors push, strive and grind, and they do that work, and there are a lot of warriors out there. And I think to some extent you probably need to be a warrior first. But then a magician taps into certainty, which is that quiet belief that things are unfolding exactly as they should. They're really uncomfortable in the unknown. She used Dusty Martin as an example. She said he would step into a different state when it mattered the most. And on the footy field, he was calm, present and certain. And that's when the ball bounced the right way. His kicks ended up exactly where they should have been. He was unstoppable. And there's not very many people who reach that magician state, I don't think. For me, I thought of Muhammad Ali because he just was such an enigma, and people just thought of him as just so in the moment all the time. And I'm sure there are other people out there that do, but it is just, I guess I really loved understanding what it was about their mindset that separated them. And it really is that trust, that belief that you are where you're meant to be and that everything is going to work out. Even when I guess at times it doesn't look like it is, but knowing that that's all part of the journey. And that space, Emma said, only opens up when someone is ready for it. And due to how we're wired, we can't reach our full potential without embracing that mindset. I thought that was really interesting, that we can reach, we can get to warrior status or we can reach really high levels, but to actually reach our full potential or to be a magician or just to be the best we possibly can, we really do need to embrace a positive mindset, or that mindset that unlocks that for us. If I had to boil down what really stuck with me from my conversation with Emma, it would be this: nothing you've done is ever wasted. Presence is a performance skill. Awareness comes before any change. You have to be aware of your self-thoughts. Mindset supports skill. It doesn't replace it. And learning how to regulate yourself might be one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop. This conversation was such a reminder that success isn't just about pushing harder. It's about learning how to pause, refocus, and stay present enough to access what you've already built. And that's where Emma's work feels so powerful. I'll be sure to include a link to Emma's high-performance mindfulness website in the notes below. And all other reference material that Emma mentioned can be found in the show notes from part 1 and 2 of Conversations with Emma. Thanks for listening to Jules FM, stories of courage, creativity and possibility. If something in this conversation lit a spark, take the step, find your courage and see what happens. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit follow on your favourite podcast app and leave a 5-star review. It helps us share these stories with more people. Until next time, keep backing yourself and chasing what's possible.